Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
Hi, this is Eric.
And this is Carl.
And welcome back to Romulans Bearing Gifts. This is episode 69, continuing on with season 2 of Strange New Worlds. We got a light crew here today, but I think we can handle this episode.
We got this. I mean, assuming we can remember.
So tuck in, whatever that means. And here we go with Among the Lotus Eaters. So I'll start by saying the first 3 episodes of the season preceding this, I think, had a lot going on, each in their own unique way. I think it only makes sense at some point to have an episode that is perhaps a bit more low-key.
Yeah.
I think that's what this episode is. I was surprised to see Pike's significant other back in the show. I never thought we'd see her as much as we have. I know she was introduced in season 1, of course, and I was kind of surprised that they're still together after what happened in the second episode.
Yeah,
and I like them, I guess, as a couple. But we have a difficult scene in the beginning with Pike being weird. I totally understand, but I don't know. I don't know what it is about his character. I feel like I don't know him well enough to know, number one says, "Oh, you're doing that thing that you do," when someone gets too close to you. I wonder where that comes from with him, or my initial thought was, it's because he's thinking about, the thing, quote unquote, his future. Because even though he's kind of resolved and made peace with that, as we saw last season, perhaps I don't know. Do you think he has that on his mind?
That's interesting. There were many things I was thinking about when it came to his concerns. That was not what I was thinking about, but that might be a very legitimate stressor on him. That's interesting. I wasn't thinking about that because I was thinking about the responsibility of captain. You're dating another captain. You're never going to see each other, and he seemed to be a sort of a all or nothing kind of guy, where if he cannot give 100% or be 100%, that it doesn't seem like him. So that is what I was thinking about. But the whole other dimension of what his future might hold. That may very well have also added into the complexity.
Yeah, because actually that angle was my initial thought, because I was thinking, it's almost like having a terminal disease, even if you have another 5 years, I don't know what he has left. It's like having a terminal disease, but not informing your significant other.
Right.
Which, I don't know. You should just go ahead and tell him. Obviously, timelines are already messy at this point. I don't want to revisit my issue in last week's episode because I was literally still thinking about it a whole week after the fact of when we recorded that episode. I still can't get over that we're in a new prime. We're not in the original prime.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I don't want to break open that wound. So they're going back to Rigel 7. And did you recall what Rigel 7 was from the past, or our past in Star Trek?
I didn't remember. I knew the name sounded familiar, but I did not put together the details.
Have you now put together the details?
Nope.
All right. Well, prepare to get your mind blown.
All right, hit it.
Okay. So this is a planet that has been visited before on screen in Star Trek. It's just that the episode, when it was seen before, I was going to say first, but that depends.
You mean in the
Timey-wiminess.
in the original series?
Well, it's definitely in TOS.
Mm-hmm.
It appeared in The Cage.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then it also appeared in the Menagerie, of course, vis-a-vis The Cage. But the thing is, okay, it's you remember in The Cage, Pike is in the cage or in the cell, and the Telosians start like sending him on mind trips with the girl.
Right.
So the place that he gets taken to, I think it's I don't know what to call this dream sequence or whatever it is, illusion. I think it's the one where she's dressed up like a medieval maiden.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's like a castle with like a pink background, or it's not it's like a castle, but it almost has like like these little towers that are kind of like a mosque, or like that place in
I remember the book
in Moscow.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then there's like this barbarian guy that Pike has to go off against.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, that's the location. Okay. Now, of course, we saw it in a dream sequence. If you go back and watch The Cage, in the episode when Pike is in the dream sequence, he starts to recognize where he is, and he's like, "Oh, this is the away mission we were on 2 weeks ago." So he's seeing a recreate. So that away mission that he went on 2 weeks prior to The Cage, that ostensibly is when he had visited this planet before, him and Una. That they reference in this episode.
Okay.
All right. So is this all tracking?
Well, so far, I mean, I was waiting to hear if there was a broader significance, because, there were many pastel faux planets visited, by the original series characters. So that was my issue, that sometimes I kind of got them confused, which planet we were on. But, okay, so I remember these elements. Was there something more that I'm missing?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, all right. So all right. I was trying to figure out, if there was some bigger thing about Rigel 7 from the original series, that like an Easter egg or something significant that I had missed.
No, nothing like that.
All right,
because we knew very little, other than it was like a medieval level technology planet.
Okay,
that's kind of all we knew about it from TOS.
All right, okay. Well, that's all I had. So okay, well, good. I thought I was missing something big. So all right, great.
So another interesting thing about this episode is it seems like it's going to be our long-awaited Ortegas episode. Because it starts with her, doing the Stardate business.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm all here for an Ortegas heavy episode, except it really isn't. Mm-hmm. I mean, she's like the co-main, sort of.
Yep.
In the episode, which, I mean, it's better than nothing. But the way they set it up, I really thought she was going to go on the away mission, and I was like really looking forward to that. And when it turned out she had to stay with the ship, I was as turned down and sullen as she was.
Yeah, I was looking forward to seeing her in the out in the real world.
Yeah, like take on different kinds of situations other than just piloting.
I wonder if there's going to be an ongoing gag with her.
I hope not.
Every time it's a mission she's supposed to be on, she ends up having to go back to fly the ship.
Yeah, I really hope not. And of course, thank goodness she had to stay on the ship, because then all would have been lost. Mm-hmm. So let me fast forward a bit on the plot. La'an, Pike, Spock, and Benga, they get down to the planet because you see there's signs that somehow Starfleet, or there's been some type of infection into the culture. This is supposed to be some type of medieval culture, but now they have this Starfleet Delta in their garden, like the pattern. And I was kind of thinking they were gonna do an episode like that episode of Prodigy, the one where the alien race,
yep,
like emulates Starfleet and Federation life. I kind of thought maybe they're going to go that way. And I was like, which is a cool idea, except we've talked about it before. They need to stop accidentally stepping on each other's tails.
Yeah,
like
why?
These different shows.
Too soon. Yeah.
Yes. But no, it turns out on that away mission previously mentioned, Pike thought that he lost 3 members of his crew on that mission that were killed. But it turns out one of them survived. And him being, from a technologically advanced race and having some of his medical equipment on him for the mission, once he survived, he basically took over as ruler of the land. And they capture Pike and company. And, Pike, is like, oh, come on, just come back. He's like, yeah, no way. I've already gone too far. So, of course, they put him in a cage, which is supposed to be a joke, I think. But there's something else going on. There's some other phenomenon that I think it started affecting Mbenga first.
Yeah, I was trying to remember who was first.
I think it was Mbenga.
But I think it was La'an. Wasn't it La'an? Did she?
Could have been.
It was close. I can't remember. I think it was La'an though.
But it starts with some tinnitus. Maybe it was La'an. Starts with some tinnitus. Then you get like intense headache / migraine, and then you start to lose your memories. But you don't lose all your memories. Like your core feelings and emotions and deep down things you retain. Things that involve emotion or like extreme repetitiveness you retain, but you lose other memories of details and things like that. You can't make really new memories. And that's a thing. And our 3 members of the way team get, first they're in the cage, but then eventually they need to join like a work crew. And it seems like there's like a bunch of the citizens of this society get involved with work crews where they just do manual labor or farming, but again, don't really remember who they are.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that they are organized by people, by the what do you want to call them? The soldiers, the superiors, the managers that go back to the castle. So
yes.
The people are out there working. And the managers have arranged a camp for them to do their work. So, yeah.
A very classic situation in sci-fi. Mm-hmm. Or some kind of situation where there are oppressive overlords and oppressed workers. That is a very common trope in sci-fi and Star Trek in general. But yeah. And I was getting into this episode up to this point because I saw the problem in the situation, and for the life of me, I could not think how they were going to get out of this. And so a situation like that tends to draw me in because I have so many questions, and I'm trying to work it out, and I can't work it out. And just to make matters worse, up on the ship, they start experiencing the same type of symptoms as those down on the planet. And I really thought, well, now we're really screwed. How are they going to get out of this?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That was the situation was spreading, and we couldn't figure out why that was the case.
Yeah, because it seemed like, okay, there's radiation on the planet that causes it, but then it was like, why is it in space too? Mm-hmm. It's like, what is going on here? And Spock, I can't remember who had the idea, if it was Spock or someone else had the idea of maybe if we, move the ship over towards these like natural like asteroids, that they might shield us from the effects. But it only makes it worse.
Yeah.
Which I did not see that coming.
Yep.
It would make it worse. I don't know. And then on the Enterprise, the situation starts devolving. It reminds me of those episodes of TOS and TNG, especially. Was it the Naked Now? The one where the crew whether it's TOS or TNG, like the same premise.
Yeah,
the crew's getting like inebriated.
Yep.
So this kind of reminded me of that situation. at least what was happening up in space on the Enterprise, because everybody was just completely losing it. And there were some nice scenes when Ortega started getting affected, and then she got scared, like she didn't know where she was. She thought like Spock was trying to attack her or something. And when she goes back to her quarters,
with the help of Starfleet Alexa.
By the way, okay, am I crazy? Is that, whether intentional or not, doesn't that go back to the motion picture?
What? Are you the voice?
In the motion picture, see, I'm not sure though if I'm mixing it up with something from TNG. So in the motion picture, when Kirk first gets on board the Enterprise, he goes to engineering. He doesn't really want to do this whole inspection thing. And, Decker's there showing him around. And then at some point, he's like leaving engineering, and Kirk's going to go back to his quarters or something. And then someone's like, "Do you need help?" He's like, "No, I know where to go. I know the Enterprise." And then like he gets lost a little bit in the corridor.
Okay.
And I think someone gives him directions, but was there the light thing there? Like I want to say there was the blinking light that would show you like how to get to where you're going.
It's been a long time since I saw the motion picture.
I meant to check this before the podcast, and I just neglected to.
Interesting. It seemed familiar is my quick answer. I could not remember where I had seen the effect before, but maybe.
I think it. Okay, I'll have to verify for next episode, but I think it's the motion picture. I could be crossing something with TNG, but I think it's motion picture where there's these lights blinking in the corridor that Kirk follows.
Well, I found it amusing that the ship's AI was just as unhelpful as our modern devices. Like you would think in the future, with the ship in that kind of danger and that kind of stuff going on, the ship would be a bit more forthcoming with information while the pilot is fumbling around. But no, still the same kind of thing. Only the bare minimum info.
Yeah, and you would think in that type of situation, like if the whole crew gets unconscious, that there would be basic subroutines where the ship would try to, like what do you call it, self-preservation?
Yeah. Reset or backtrack or something to rather than just sit there. The AI seemed amazingly static in this scenario.
Yeah, but it was still amusing though, the antics, I guess, that were happening. Although how Ortega, I can't remember how she came up with that mantra to get her back on track.
Remember Spock handed her the report about her, so that was the first place she saw it. That's the only thing she really knew about herself. Remember, Spock hands her the.
Yes.
So that she was trying to stay focused, and like you said, there were some elements of your memories that are so ingrained that it resonates with you. So that I am certain is a strong passion of hers, and seeing as it's the only thing she knew about herself, and then the only thing that she could feel at the same time, that seemed a good way to center. So.
Now, back on the planet, while all this is happening, Pike and Company, they get with the working crews, and even though they don't hardly even remember each other as being friends, they can still sense that like this isn't right. And then there's some other clues, as to that they don't belong here. And they meet a guy who's sort of like a elder or like a foreman amongst the crew, a little bit older, wiser guy. And he talks about how he'll help them adjust to things by introducing him to the totem, and that the totem helps ground you and center you. And then he explains further that perhaps like their memories are somehow like kept in like a box or something inside the castle. And I know this all sounds weird, to explain it, but for some reason when I was watching it, I just totally went with it.
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't make sense. I just totally went with the fact that like Pike's going to find a box or something, and then it's all gonna. I don't know why I went with that, because it doesn't make any sense. It's preposterous.
No. That is part of the classic good storytelling with original series Trek and what they have brought back here. Sometimes we find ourselves in, outrageous situations, and any information that's made available, any little clue that might, no matter how outrageous it might sound, in that scenario, in that situation, maybe you have to respect it, maybe you have to listen. So, yeah, I bought it too. In terms of, I didn't ask a lot of questions about it because it seemed like the only tenuous piece of information to the mystery that they had. And when that's the case, you kind of respect it. But, doesn't matter that it didn't make sense. Doesn't matter. It's the only thing they knew. So it was, it added a bit of tension. And like I said, it was a little breadcrumb to hang on to.
Now, let's just say, okay, I was going with everything the whole time. And as I said earlier, I just couldn't for the life of me figure out how they're going to overcome all their obstacles. And when Kirk and Mbenga and Lon, start trying to take over the castle, this is where things started to take a turn for me in terms of enjoying the episode. It seems surprisingly easy for just the three of them to infiltrate the castle. And then when Pike gets to the throne room, and by the way, what was Wynn doing? Yeoman Wynn, who's become the Overlord. Does he just hang out in the throne room all day? Like, I always wondered that about kings. Like, they just hang out in the throne room, got nothing better to do, but just to sit and wait. It's almost like a video game when you're like trying to get to the boss, and then you assume the boss is just sitting there waiting for you the whole time. That was weird. And then I saw other people liked when Pike picked up the serving dish or whatever and used it like a shield. But I was like, what the hell is that? I mean, that doesn't work. Like, when you go against someone who has a firearm, you don't just pick up a shield. And then if you're the other guy shooting, are you aiming for the shield?
Right.
What? That's not how guns work. Like, I get in Star Wars, Jedis have the Force, that I can use that to make sense on how Jedi can, block blasts with their lightsabers. This isn't Star Wars. What the hell is this shield? That shield business took me out of it. Other people thought it was cool, but that just made no sense.
Yeah, that was a little hilarious. I mean, look, he's gonna do heroic stuff like that, and so I'm going with the tongue-in-cheekness of it. Because it's supposed to, I think it's supposed to be kind of like macho funny. I think that's kind of what they were going for there. Because it's not a whole Captain America duck and cover behind it. He's just kind of leisurely walking along, and it's popping off the shield. So that was.
But, I mean, I get it in media of like the 1960s and prior.
Right.
There's numerous examples of where real world physics don't count.
Yep.
But it's weird to watch it in a modern show.
Yeah.
Like if you were watching like the remake of Magnum PI on CBS or wherever it airs, the new version, it would be weird if someone just picked up, a tray and was like blocking bullets like he was Wonder Woman. Like in a modern show, you'd just be like, what the hell is happening right now?
Yeah.
Or like this old trope, because me and the other guys who we podcast with, we were watching a 1945 Sherlock Holmes movie yesterday, The House of Terror or something like that. Anyway, or The House of Fear. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But the point is, at one point, the movie had that trope where like the bad guy has a gun in his hand, and then a good guy like literally shoots the gun out of his hand without harming him in any other way.
Yes.
It used to happen all the time in movies and TV shows.
Yep.
How does that work?
Well, that's how good of a shot you are. So, you just shoot a gun out of somebody's hand without hurting them.
And the bad guy just like shakes his hand like, ow!
Yeah.
It's like, what?
That's skill.
But see, I get it. Like in historical movies and shows, it's just a bit odd in a modern program. But anyway, whatever. That's not even my biggest beef. So it's surprisingly easy to completely infiltrate the castle, and now Wynn just surrenders basically. But then why does he have to then go on and explain everything? Oh, well, you're going to probably feel better soon anyway. It's the castle, that's all it is, the castle and then the helmets that the guys wear. Oh, it was so deflating to me to hear like the resolution was just simply be in the castle and just wait it out.
Well, all right. So once again, the recognition that these are, for the most part, bottle shows, framed my expectations. Now, up until this point, they've done pretty good, where they've managed to cram an awful lot of stuff in an episode. It doesn't necessarily feel claustrophobic, but with an episode like this, where I'll say the core feels a little bit more gimmicky. I don't mean it as crass as that, but when it feels like the story is really much more about the characters than the catch, than the bigger story, then I get that feeling that they're going to wrap things up unusually neatly by the time the episode ends. And I had that feeling here. Now, I was very curious as to how they were going to get it, because like you, you're watching this, and they're setting up a scenario where the trap just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and it's less and less likely that there would be an escape anywhere. But, given the fact that I assumed this would be resolved in a single episode, I knew it was going to have to be something neat. I don't mean awesome or cool. I just mean simple and clean is how they were going to, resolve this. So, that wasn't such a shock to me that it was something like that that got it. But still, there were some other questions that I thought were interesting that they didn't, that they could have gone through, that they didn't really address.
Like what?
Well, for one, when right at the end, when Pike finally confronts what's his name, Zacharias, the guy they left behind.
Oh, I just know his last name is Wynn.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah. When Pike is starting to wail on Wynn, he is rather aggressive with him, and we have known the captain to be measured and balanced and fair. And to see that side of him coming out, it's really a savage kind of side to Pike.
Oh, yeah.
Really, we haven't seen a whole lot of evidence of. And so that opens up some interesting things about, the potential of Pike. Does he have a darker spirit that he is, regulating, all of the time? Is that something? Because,
I see what you're saying, but I wasn't sure if it was something unique to Pike, or it's something that could have happened to almost anyone. Because
when you looked at La'an and M'Benga, who have war trauma experience, they didn't seem to be quite as violent as Pike. Now, again, maybe it was just the scenario that Pike was in and the extreme frustration that he was in, but it just didn't feel like, even when they were trying to, I say trying to in the air quotes, take over the camp, that they were not unified in their aggression, so some were kind of like, I don't think we should be doing this. And some of them were, not embracing the violence of it. I just thought that, what they say when you drink, the real part of who you are starts to come out. And I was assuming that maybe something like that was the case here, where whatever this illness was, the poisoning, the radiation poisoning or whatever, was unleashing a truer, baser part of that.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, and I mean, you're definitely right. M'Benga and Lon did not react the same way at all. You're right about that. But for some reason, I just thought it was a situation of, like if you lost like your higher functioning part of your brain and just like your lizard brain, as they call it, existed. I kind of thought it was just kind of like Pike's lizard brain.
Mm-hmm.
just taking over, so you didn't have the moral code of a fully sentient human. But then I wonder too if there was somehow something to do with, because it was a powerful line when Pike was later talking about, but everything after that was your fault because, we mourned for you, I mourned for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was powerful. And I wonder if maybe some of that sentiment was deep down inside and that caused him to be extra angry in the moment.
Well, see, and this is the other thing. I mean, again, we are putting together these teeny little breadcrumbs that we have to work with within the story. I am assuming that the effect of the radiation was lessening on Pike during this exchange.
Yeah, I think so too.
And so, all the more reason to try to get a little bit more clarity about this. He did get a bit more poetic and thoughtful as this exchange went on. Because he's bringing in some higher functions to say, look, man, this is your responsibility. Sure, we might have left you. We didn't know you were alive, but now you're down here messing stuff up, and that was on you. That dialogue is bringing in more thought and more balance and more, but like I said, this is on the heels of him almost, blowing him away and beating him down with a butt. So, I don't know. Like I said, the exploration of what happened to Pike, his transition, I thought there could have been more to what was going on with that. But anyway, like I said, we didn't have that much time. This is,
Yeah, and I was almost afraid it was going to turn into a two-parter, and I didn't want it to be a two-parter, but
right.
But because, and I don't know if you've noticed, almost every episode this season, except for one, has been pretty close to an hour,
right?
Which is kind of nutty too. That we've been getting these real chunky, meaty episodes of Star Trek. Okay, question time. I got questions.
Yeah.
So once they get their senses back, I think they figure out that the reason why the radiation is prevalent on the planet is because of the asteroid that crashed 5,000 years ago.
Right.
And the Enterprise removes it, right, from the planet?
Yeah.
And sends it back into space?
Yeah.
Join the rest of the asteroid belt?
Yeah. Okay, go on. Yeah, what's the question?
So my question is going to be, is this a violation of the Prime Directive?
Well, an interesting question, because I mean they had already screwed stuff up.
True, and yeah,
and now the asteroid was not their fault, but they had so corrupted things that maybe their cleanup is a way to try to start over, to reset things. Because, there is an argument that the primitive society that lived in the poison of the radiation had its own cultural significance. You could say something like that. But the problem is wind had jacked everything up so bad that even if that were the case, it's too late to preserve what was there.
I'm just curious because it seems to me that a lot of fans and maybe some of the people who are regulars on this podcast really like the ideal or the concept of the Prime Directive.
Mm-hmm.
And as I think I said an episode or two ago, I personally never signed off on the Prime Directive, meaning I've never necessarily been on board with how it's been written or presented in Star Trek. Like it has always seemed quite flawed to me. I think there's a good idea and good intent in it, and it makes for a lot of interesting stories. But many fans defend it as this ideal rule, and I'm just not there. So I don't know. I'm always dubious of the Prime Directive myself. An observation before I get to more questions. I think I've said this one before too, in regards to Strange New Worlds, but I'll say it again. So, you can. It's pretty easy to spot once you know what you're looking for. Like whenever they use the volume, especially in Strange New Worlds, and for virtually all the scenes when they're out on the planet landscape, it's they're using the volume technology, and I think it's interesting because, okay, I can always tell it's the volume, so I don't ever think, oh, they're really like in Canada or Siberia. No, I don't. No, it doesn't look like they're literally like in that landscape. But even though I can tell the volume, tell it's the volume, it's still done well enough, and obviously it looks so much better than what they could pull off in previous versions of Trek, like in the early aughts and prior. They could never, put together a fake alien landscape like the way they can with the volume. But because, so usually when we see the planet in this episode, you see the background, which is presumably a digital 3D matte, and then you have the ground with snow, and then you have like a few rocks or boulders, to kind of like add some depth to the scene or whatever.
Right.
And that's pretty much it. And even though the volume works rather well as an effects tool, because there's something simplistic about the way these landscapes look, it weirdly works for me as like a nostalgia reference to the landscapes and how they looked in TOS.
Yeah.
Does this make sense? And I don't know if they're planning that on intentionally.
Well, as strong as they are with the sentiment and with the hat tipping, I'm assuming that is the case. Because, I mean, even the rocks with our modern technologies still have that, heated foam look to them, like, good old original series. I think they are heavily, I don't want to say simplifying or, dumbing down. I don't quite know. I think there's a compromise between making it photorealistic and representing the styrofoam and spray paint of the old school. I really think they are intentionally doing something because, I think they are intentionally doing something that is nostalgically bringing back what we had seen.
Yeah, I wish I could ask this question because it kind of seems like a happy accident to me, but maybe it is. Like
I'm thinking this is planning. I'm thinking it's planning.
Okay.
Because, like you said, there are so many ways they could have gone with, the rocks and the foreground and things with the volume. They've got the experience. We know that, this team knows how to make really realistic utilization of the volume. So when you go to a planet like this that is supposed to be from the original series era, and as much noise as the fans are always making about how the new stuff doesn't quite look like, the old stuff, sometimes the compromise can be beautiful. This is like the hand drawn. It's the watercolor version of modern Trek, and I see it. I firmly believe it's intentional.
Yeah, so it mostly works for me, surprisingly.
Yeah,
because it's almost an uncanny valley situation where if you go too much or too little in a certain direction with the effect, it'll be ruined. So somehow they're in a happy middle place for me where it works more as nostalgia than as a hindrance.
Even the palette, the color palette of that purple sky and the gradients of it, it really, harkens back to what they were doing in the 60s. So I can't believe that, the unrealness of it, yet the modern take on the effects, I'm certain that this is all intentional.
So I giveth a compliment, I taketh away. As much as I agree with everything you just said, and I like all that, as mentioned, this references this very particular planet seen in the cage. And actually, even if you're someone who hasn't seen the cage specifically, but you have watched TOS, you still may have actually seen this location before. Because if you remember the closing credits for TOS, they would always like flash all these still images from other adventures.
Yep.
And the image that just shows the castle and the pinkish purplish sky behind it, that's one of the iconic shots that came up frequently in the closing credits. Mm-hmm. So it was very prevalent, even if you haven't seen the cage. That being said, this castle, or whatever it is, I think it's supposed to be the same one.
Okay.
That we saw in the cage.
Yep.
And it is reminiscent for sure. And as much as they did lean into the pastel look, it just doesn't look as cool to me as the original. Like, I feel like they could have gone even further just for this particular location. They could have gone even bolder because that original image is so iconic. And this, as much as it hints to it, it's too subtle. It's too safe for me. I wish they would have gone a little bit more just on this.
All right. I can see that. I don't know where the line on that balance should be. To me, it felt about right, but to me, it felt about right. And I believe they could have gone further. They could have done more, but it just to me, the episode was more about the people.
Certainly.
And that's kind of...
Let's see. Okay. There's a little bit of what I guess could be considered a continuity issue in universe that a lot of other reviewers pointed out on this episode, which is when they show the crew photos of the three deceased members of the away team. Mm-hmm. So presumably this happened, they say in the episode, I think 5 years ago. And they're all wearing the standard uniform, colored tunic that they currently wear in Strange New Worlds. But it seems like they should have been wearing one of 3 other uniforms other than that uniform if it was 5 years prior. It seems like in those photos, they should have been wearing either Discovery uniforms, that's one choice, or the actual Cage era uniforms, as we saw in Strange New Worlds, the very first episode, where in the photograph that Pike has with him shaking April's hand, and they're wearing the old school beige tunics with like the almost like the turtlenecks and whatever, like almost the velvety looking material. That's another choice. Or I guess they could have worn the primary colored uniforms that Pike wore when his crew was introduced on Discovery, which was like the high collar.
Right.
So it seems like any one of those 3 choices would have been better than showing the current Strange New World uniform.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
So that just seemed like a little, I seen the credits. There's someone who's called a continuity advisor. They should have maybe caught that. Yeah. I'm not calling you out, Janine Dupuy, script and continuity supervisor.
Not by name, of course. Right.
But little thing. I mean, which leads to another thing that I didn't really fully grasp ever since we've been watching Strange New Worlds, even season 1. For some reason, I had it in my head that since Strange New Worlds started with season 1, I thought we were following the Enterprise crew pre-Cage. I don't know why. Maybe something in Discovery led me astray when Pike and company were in season 2 of Discovery. Maybe that's what screwed me up. I don't know. But I always assumed we were pre-Cage, which is why it never made sense to me. Like, why are we including Uhura in this crew? Like, why would she join the Enterprise so early?
So why do you believe it is not pre-Cage?
it can't be anymore because we've established the Cage episode occurred approximately 5 years prior to where we are in the show right now.
Oh, that's right. Because from just on Discovery, he's remembering back.
Well, see, I have to go back to Discovery because, of course, spoiler if you haven't seen Discovery season 2, but there's that episode where they go. I can't think of the name of the planet now, where the Telosians live.
Right. That's the one I was thinking about. Okay, well, wait. So why do you think it is? Why do you think it is not pre-Cage?
I don't know about Discovery, but the Strange New World series,
right,
must be 4 to 5 years post the Cage. Now, in light of this information, because they lost these crew members five years ago, and that away mission happened 2 weeks before the events of the Cage.
Really? Okay. All right. No, I didn't know that tidbit.
Because in the Cage episode, again, when Pike goes to the hallucination and he recognizes the planet,
right,
and he's like, "This is where I was 2 weeks ago." So now we know this is 5 years. So it has to be. So season 1 probably started approximately 4 years after the Cage.
All right, timey-wimey. That's interesting.
And now I'm all turned up upside down now that I've had this revelation.
Okay, all right. Well, so we have to start doing some relevant event time versus actual chronological time. I got to think about it, because if it is relative event time, that is one thing. If we are trying to adhere to a chronological time, that is a whole other problem.
And if it is post-Cage, okay, it makes sense now. Like, okay, Uhura can be here, obviously, because we're closer to Kirk's time. It makes sense why, like, what happened to the old white guy doctor who was in the... Because I always kept thinking he was going to come someday and Mbenga would get kicked out, but no, it's the opposite. Because the Cage, he was like the senior medical and Mbenga was like his assistant or something.
Right. Well, I mean, these are small things, because there's nothing that says that, he could not still be on another ship right now. And, for timey-wimey reasons, Mbenga just got swapped out mission-wise. There's small things like that, but I got to think about it, because
so now I'm all twisted, because, like I said, I've always been assuming we hadn't gotten to the Cage yet in Pike's life, but now we've certainly gone way past it.
Well, again, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's the case. I'm not sure that that's the case. There might be, because I don't think the presence of Uhura and the Mbenga variant is enough to say that event wise we cannot still be pre-Cage.
I just think it's because of this episode, this Lotus Eater episode is, I think, what sets events in order, and so that's why I've been dealing with this, because I just didn't have that, just didn't think that. But weird side note about the Wynn character, or the actor who plays him, because I guess the character's supposed to be of Vietnamese ethnicity, I assume, based on his surname. And the tyrant version of him, he lets his hair grow out, and he's got like the Asian goatee. I should have researched this better, but do you remember this actor who showed up in a lot of 80s action movies, sometimes sci-fi, and then maybe he was in a few movies going into the early 90s? He never really had any speaking lines in any of these movies, but you always recognized him when you saw him. Mm-hmm. And I remember him pretty well in Big Trouble in Little China.
Right. That's well.
And he was in like so many other movies. Do you see who I'm talking about? Like,
I know who you're talking about.
This guy kind of reminded me of him.
Okay.
Just because of his hair and etc. So I need to figure out that guy's name.
Yeah, he was in a bunch of stuff. That guy was in a bunch of stuff. So
yeah, so that was just a weird thing that I was just thinking in the back of my head. Okay, here's another question, maybe my last. What do we think about the social messaging going on? Because I mean, that's a thing that just comes with sci-fi and Star Trek in general. The overarching message from the predicament, the situation. Like, did they pull it off? Is it worthy? Is it food for thought? The whole idea of, and it's in the title, Lotus Eaters, because I didn't realize that was, a known term with meaning, like in the English language already, like prior to this. And I guess it comes from Greek culture, like ancient Greek. That Lotus Eaters refers to like this race of people who lived on the island where there's a lotus plant and they would eat it. And the plant had like a narcotic effect where it would cause you just to feel really like content with yourself and your situation. So it kind of stymies like the population. So that, I mean, that's where they get the title from. And so this memory situation, you can almost say it's like self-medicating in a way.
Yeah.
Like, whether it was like alcohol or opiates or something, like something that takes away what could potentially be the pains of real life.
Sure.
And then just choosing like this existence of just existing really without the pain, but not really advancing yourself mentally or physically or anything, just sort of being like in a stasis of being. So how do we think about this whole social messaging? Like, did they pull it off? Was it interesting?
The old guy with the totems really brought this point home. It's interesting you bring it up because there are two things that are going on, and it complicates the message for me. The two things going on are because crewman Wynn has used his knowledge and power to dominate that the message of him coming here and taking over intersects and interferes with what I would think the broader message was, which is what the old guy was saying, which is I've had pain and trauma in my life, and to live in this blissful state of ignorance, to me, is safer, a kinder place than to live with the memory of the pain. That his thing that he's doing here, again, so this is the other thing I was talking about. There were elements that they could have gone more into. Those are the two messages that I see. So, one message is, with the power and knowledge, you can oppress those that are uninformed, and can gain power from that. So that's what Wynn Starfleet does. But then you've got these people who live in this continual state of I won't say ignorance, but unknowing. And this guy, the old guy, has a glimmer. He seems to be the most aware in the fact that he knows he doesn't know, right? You can see, he hasn't gotten to the box, he hasn't gotten to the castle, and he has chosen not to proceed to try to get his knowledge back, to get his memories back. So that's the second message that is going on. Some might choose to live in this state of blissful unawareness. And what does that say from a moral standpoint? So which one of those were you talking about?
Well, kind of the both. I mean, probably more the second is what I was going for, but I'm very aware of the other side too, because it's like the old famous Karl Marx quote about religion being like the opiate of the masses. Yeah. And it kind of ties into the same thing, that if people are just content, then it's really easy to lord over them, as Wynn does. So you definitely have like the class struggle there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then you also have the people who are willingly complicit to go along,
Yeah.
and just be pawns.
It's. I think the avoidance of pain is probably the greater goal versus the choice to be a pawn. I think this guy, his effort to avoid
Yeah.
is at the heart of his motivation versus he's taken on. I'm willing to be a pawn, but
But then it also makes you wonder because, like I said, I mentioned self-medicating because it is like an allegory for people who choose to self-medicate, like with alcohol or other substances, and they know exactly what they're doing. Some of them, like that, it has to do with suppressing a pain that they can't suppress any other way, or can't face, or don't want to face, and so they choose to, they choose their substance of choice.
yeah,
And yeah, I don't know. There's something to be said there. I mean, the episode doesn't take anything far enough with this concept to get controversial about it.
yeah, yeah.
But one wonders, though.
Well, yeah. I mean, but your first question gets back to this, which is, did they violate the Prime Directive? Because and this is why I was fudging it with the answer. Also, in this situation, if Wynn had not been there, and there was this planet full of people who had, developed or lived in this state of perpetual unknowing, would at that point dropping down there, pulling the meteor or the asteroid away, and then returning their memories or giving them the capacity to remember, would that have been the major violation of the Prime Directive? Oh, and would a culture built on the state of unknowing have its own cultural significance? Would that be just that there is a culture built that way? Is there something to it? But again, it was just a 1 hour episode and a lot going on.
Yeah, and not to get biblical for a second, but I have found in recent years, commenting on movies and shows and all kinds of things, it's almost a game, but not really. Where I'm amazed at how you can associate just the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve story.
Mm-hmm.
You can associate it with so many other works of fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's really crazy. And if anyone knows anything about the story, Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, everything was perfect, but they lived in ignorant bliss. But then, of course, there's the whole situation with the apple and the serpent. And by consuming the apple, which you're told not to do, you get like full human consciousness, sentience, and self-awareness, which is supposed to like represent like humans like knowledge expanding about themselves and the surrounding world. So if you know that story, by the Enterprise removing the asteroid, is that akin to the serpent pushing the apple of knowledge to Eve, or Adam and Eve?
Yeah. That's where we're getting. But like I said, the context of this episode doesn't give us enough. Like I said, if Wynn had not been there and they had encountered a planet of people like this, that is one question and one thing to ask. The problem is, because of Wynn's influence, it mixes this message up. It would have been more interesting to have encountered a people that way and then decide, have the moral question, should Starfleet, allow for their development by removing the meteor. So, again, Wynn's influence has a big impact and it causes a problem.
Certainly. It's just weird.
Yeah.
It's just weird to start breaking it down.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, yeah, I mean that whole, knowledge changes things. I mean, it's the apple, it's the blue or red pill. It's,
right.
It's any time you bring in knowledge, it's going to change the balance of how things were. And you got to decide, I mean, the ecology, if we lived in primitive ways, the, ecological balance could be maintained. The moment we take on the technology, we have the greater ability to manipulate our environment, but therefore the greater responsibility for the environment. It's always more knowledge causes change and more responsibility. So,
yeah, I mean, you're dancing so close to the famous Spider-Man quote.
yeah, well, look, it's always great power and great responsibility. More knowledge, more responsibility. It's always that.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, wow, I didn't necessarily think that this episode would incite so much deep thought, because at the end of the day, the story itself is fairly simple on paper.
Yep. Yeah.
A lot of it is us like filling in the blanks around it.
And that's the power of when you can do these bottle shows right. A lot of stuff happened in this episode, and it's mostly about characters. It's character development. It's about the people in this episode. Everything from Ortega's really finding herself, in the romance between the captains. What's going on. There's a lot of stuff happening once again for a 50-minute episode. And so they are playing upon our expectations, our the stories that we bring with us, but they're doing it well. Like you said, it's a simple episode, simple story, but it still manages to have a degree of depth to it.
Yeah, and they didn't really reference this too much, what I'm about to say, but there was a part of me thinking about how, like Lon's character coming off of what had just happened in the previous episode, there was a part of me thinking about, because, she obviously went through a lot of emotional pain at the very end of the previous episode. And then part of me was thinking about that as she was losing her memories, that, this is convenient, because now you don't have to think about alternate Kirk and all that other business.
Yeah.
Maybe I would have wished that they would have touched a little bit more upon that, like her dealing with that and then experiencing that blissful ignorance.
Asking for more pain from Kurtzman Productions is probably something we should be very careful about. I think they are truly trying to adhere to the original series kind of bottle philosophy. There are things that are going from episode to episode, but for that, I think they're being good right now and trying not to do that so much.
Oh, and I almost forgot. So once they get through the whole adventure, the fact that Pike kind of like patches things up with his significant other, that was actually sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I kind of thought they would take a break as a couple, at least on the show or something. I didn't think he would. And that's the thing I was going to say earlier too. Like when the natives of the planet come out of it, they literally get woke. When they come out of the situation with the radiation.
Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily expect Pike to wake up to his situation. And that is, and this is not a knock, because I kind of like when Star Trek would do this in TOS and TNG, especially, where the problem of the week directly dovetails with the problem that the character is facing and helps them, through their personal issues.
Yep.
And so I do like that Pike actually went on the perfect mission for him to see the light about his situation.
It's always about the characters. Yeah.
So I did like that. That was an unexpected
symmetry.
Closure. Yeah, symmetry that came at the end. So that was a bonus. I like that. And I like the concept of the necklace and everything. Only one other little side note, and then I'll be out of notes on this episode. And this isn't even about this episode. I saw on another channel that you notice a lot of these episodes this season, like they announced the start date at the beginning. Somebody noticed that the start date of episode 3 was a lower number than the start date of episode 2.
Okay.
And I was like, what the hell does that? Oh, God. Because I don't think that doesn't really work. I mean, because Lon's obviously in the episode 3. How could that episode take place before the trial? Like, are you telling me that Lon went this whole side adventure, like in between, episode 1 and episode, like, that doesn't make any sense. And then some people have said, oh, like, who cares? Because maybe they're intentionally doing like TOS when star dates didn't always make sense for multiple reasons in TOS.
Well, that would be quite the cop out. I mean, so you're saying there's a possibility that what we are watching chronologically is not happening chronologically,
or it was just a mistake, or someone just overlooked it.
Yeah,
because I don't think it's not. Once or twice in modern Doctor Who, they did stuff like this on purpose. I don't think they're planting seeds for anything.
Yeah,
I think it's just a weird anomaly.
Well, I would hope they pay attention to that kind of thing, but let's just hope it's an oversight, because we've already got enough timey-wimey stuff to deal with, and now to spring on us all of a sudden that the episodes we're watching might not be in order. That would make things a bit even more complicated.
I know, my head could explode just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, why would the star dates be different? Don't tell me it's because of all this con business and affecting the timeline. That's too much.
Yeah.
They're not that smart to like fudge with the star dates because of this situation in Toronto. Oh gosh, I don't know. I just had to bring it up.
Oh, thanks. We're shaking an already tenuous timeline.
Do you have any other final thoughts on this episode before we rate it?
No. Let's do it.
Yeah. What's our unit of measure?
Memory boxes.
Okay, memory boxes.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, I don't want to judge this one too harshly because we did have 3. I don't want to call them bangers, but 3 like extra episodes prior to this with a lot going on. So you got to come back down to earth, so to speak, every once in a while and just have like a calm episode. Has to happen. And so that's fine. A little weird referencing Rigel 7 when it doesn't actually have that much significance or connection to the prior story, but that's fine also. I probably would have rated it higher if it wasn't for, like I said, the ending being so simple and neat. And you explained very well why it was kind of like that. But that's probably going to hurt my rating a little bit. I think I'm just going to give this one a basic 3, which is not bad. I still enjoyed watching it. I just was a little subdued by that ending. But everything else is good job, Changing Worlds.
I'm giving it a 3.5, and I'm agreeing with what you're saying. The only thing I can say is, even with original series, there were places that the story went that I did not find particularly interesting. This is scenarios and things that they would create. This scenario, like, for the questions that you were bringing up, there could have been some philosophically interesting explorations if things had been set up a little bit differently that I think would have given it more depth, but that might have taken the episode in a different direction. I don't know. But the fact that, once again, they so masterfully, called upon original series feelings and ideas and looks and moments. Even though I did not find the subject matter of this episode that interesting, it is without a doubt consistent with original series. This very much felt like an original series episode to me.
Yes.
So, to see that again in this modern era is a quaint thing, and it is really remarkable how comfortable it felt. So, So, like I said, so I didn't find the scenario all that interesting, but it was fun to see the crew doing interesting things. It was pretty to go back and see Rigel. Well, 3-5.
Yeah, now I'm really curious to hear what Caleb's opinion is, because he's constantly longing for simple, like throwback feeling type episodes of Star Trek. So I wonder if this one hit the mark for him or not.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, there you have it. That was 69. Stay tuned for next week when we do episode 5 of season 2, Strange New Worlds, which will be the halfway point. I believe it's another 10 episode season.
Oh no!
So all of a sudden it's going by quickly.
Yeah.
For me.
Yep.
But it is what it is. Thank you so much. We always appreciate tweet back, which is feedback via Twitter. I think what's the handle? Star Trek RBG. I'm pretty sure is what it is. Hit us up there. Listen to Mostly Harmless Cutaway, the Dark Tube podcast. Listen to Prognosis Negative, the movie review podcast. But closing out the show today, this is Eric.
This is Carl.
And until next time,
don't forget to thread the needle.
Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
Don't forget to thread the needle.
That's good. Yeah, you're on it. Like trying to come up with something to close out these episodes.
Just came up with that. Just came up.
That was good. I got my tickets for Oppenheimer. I'm so ready.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
There is one, even though there's many premium theaters in this city, there's only one that is IMAX that can project analog film.
Wow. Okay.
We have 3 IMAX screens in the city, but only one is capable of doing projected analog.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought a ticket for that damn one theater.
Yeah.
Because I had to see it on the most premium format possible, and that is it. And there was many other premium offerings, but nothing that was that. Like the trifecta.
How far do you have to go?
I don't have to go far. It's just that it's literally downtown, which means I have to pay for parking and all that business.
Yeah. Well, that's outrageous. Yeah.
But I will spring for something special and deal with downtown. Because I was just like, just go for digital IMAX. But if you know me, Carl, I can totally tell the difference.
You, Eric?
I can totally.
I could never imagine. Yeah,
I can totally tell the difference on digital IMAX versus like the real deal.
Yeah.
I can always tell what the giveaway is always like the on-screen opening credits.
Really?
That's how I can on IMAX specifically, because IMAX is so huge. I can always see the pixelization like around like the corners of the letters.
Right.
That's the giveaway for me.
Okay.
I've always noticed it on digital IMAX.
Huh. Yeah, I gotta think, because I can tell the difference too, but I don't know how I knew. So I don't think I had something quite as straightforward as that. I think I could sense something in the motion, but I didn't think to just eyeball the edge of the text to see if I can.
Yeah, that's the tell for me. But obviously that IMAX works perfectly fine for tons of movies, but this one's special. I'm ready to be blown away.
Literally.
Yeah, right. But I mean,
yeah, I'm looking forward to this one.
Early sentiment seems to be very positive, although early sentiment was positive for like The Flash and Indy. I still can't believe that James Gunn, when speaking on The Flash, said it's one of the greatest superhero movies he's ever seen. How can he say that?
I haven't seen it. I didn't see it yet. So
I still won't spoil it. I just don't know how he could say that.
I
One of the greatest superhero movies he's ever seen. What is he talking about?
yeah, I find that difficult to believe.
It's insanity.
Hello, RBG listeners, and welcome to another surprise bonus section. I don't think I said my name last time, but just in case anyone's new to the podcast, this is Caleb here, a frequent co-host who's run into some scheduling difficulties, and just to avoid doing some more of those catching up episodes taking space on the feed, I just thought I'd record my thoughts as I'm catching up and, getting to these episodes so I can, edit the podcast for them. I've been way behind at this point. Strange New Worlds Season 2 is over, and I'm still only up on Episode 4, so I gotta try to speed through these. But among the Lotus Eaters, I'm gonna try to keep this short because I really don't have too much to say on this one. I was happy to see from the start that this seemed like this was going to be, well, I guess not from the start. There were some parts in there that felt like it was going to be more Ortegas focused, which would have been nice. But I was glad to see that we were going to get more focus on Pike. I've been missing him so far in this season. And it's nice for them to pick up on a little bit of the tendrils from the end of Season 1 when Captain Patel, her and Pike were having some little bit of relationship, maybe some strains after the whole Una trial situation. So things are coming to a head between them. They're not living on the same schedules anymore. They're starting to feel like they're maybe not on the same life paths. I'm sure many of us have been there in our own relationships, so it's easy to get pulled in by that conflict. And I like the two of them together. I think that they have a good chemistry. So I'm happy to see that they're giving a chance for both of them to get a little bit more screen time here. We're returning to Rigel 7 from the Cage and a couple other random ones. I think they went there once in TNG, I think. Or maybe I can't quite remember now. And to be honest, it's been quite a while since I watched the Cage, a couple of years now. And I don't really remember that one too well, but I suppose that's something, returning to that. And going back to Rigel 7, we get a chance to play around with this concept with them losing their memories, and I think that they do some cool stuff with that. I will say one of my disappointments for this episode was 4 episodes into Strange New Worlds, and we haven't really spent much time focused on Pike. And for him to be in this situation where, he doesn't really remember who he is, most of the crew don't remember who they are by the end of it. It's like, oh, okay, that, even though we're still getting a Pike-focused episode, it's still, it's Pike without his memories for a lot of it. So that, I thought that was a bit of a disappointment. But I did like some of the different dynamics that the characters found themselves in. I think that's cool. Getting a chance to put more focus on Ortegas. We get her little logs in the beginning and in the end. I guess that's nice to see a little more focus on her. I didn't think it was a great episode for her. I mean, I think it was okay, but it wasn't like like an in-depth kind of character look or anything like that. And hopefully we'll get one of those during the second season, because I would like to see a little bit more focus put on her. But I'm curious what the other hosts are going to think about this one. I thought this one was just okay. Nothing bad about it at all. I like episodic Star Trek. This is a fine little scenario to be put in. They had a little bit of comments on, it's better to kind of face your trauma and be, kind of let that be a part of you, not just push it away and, try to forget it. I guess that's a little bit of something there with this old man character that they met on the planet, which I liked him quite a bit. I liked the fact that he immediately, he's had some struggles in his life. He doesn't remember them, but he still knows that they were there and he still feels them. And so he's taken on this role of kind of a healer for the other people around him, his community. And he's accepted his fate and tries to help people see the positives and, just kind of cope with the slave existence that they lead. I liked him quite a bit. And I thought that the end, when he chose to, face his memories, I thought that had some emotional impact. Not a ton, but I thought it hit well enough. I like the setting. I like the memory situation. I thought that they played that out well, the little bit of a mystery there and just the way that it was disorienting. I thought all that stuff was cool. We had this situation, again, I'm sure they all went into this in more depth than I will here in this short little Caleb's Corner section. But they had this situation with this crewmate that they left on Rigel 7 on their last visit. And now he's like become this little despot leader. I think that they could have fleshed that out more. It didn't really feel like it had much impact on the story and the character himself. Just kind of felt like he was one-dimensional, and I thought that was too bad. I think they could have gotten more out of that and maybe got a more interesting dynamic. I like the way the memory loss affected them, that they were still like their core there, that they, their core abilities were just like still there because they're like almost muscle memory, but who they are, even how to read, I guess, with Spock, which I thought was surprising. In that way, I will say at times I wondered if this memory loss felt a little bit inconsistent, but they don't understand it. Maybe it's, maybe it gets a pass in that regard. But I did appreciate seeing Ortegas get a chance to be the savior for the ship, the one who, despite all the struggles that she's in, finds her way to still manage to save the day. And I did actually, I'll say, I really liked the role of the computer in this episode with Ortegas. It takes all the people, because they say home, take us to our home. They take him to the officers' quarters deck. And I like the fact that it was like lighting up a path for her. It reminded me of like a video game. If you get lost and suddenly the arrow pops up to show you where to go. It kind of felt like that. And I just like the way that the computer was such a useful tool and a useful kind of ally for her in this episode. Maybe the whole thing wouldn't have gotten solved if it hadn't been there to remind her who she is and give her that support when she needed it. So I like seeing the value of the technology there. And I did like one, because we see at the start Ortegas thinks that she's part of the landing party, but just due to some complications up in space, they need her to stay with the ship and pilot it in case they get into anything hairy. And I like that when Spock brought it over, and I noticed this at first too, when he's relaying the information about the asteroid field. I was like, why does Spock seem so like stiff and almost like he's angry or something? He seems kind of pissed off. And I realized that, he was just nervous because he knew how excited Ortegas was about this, and he was maybe unhappy to be the one to deliver that information. And then at the end, he's like, it's illogical to, think I'm at fault for this information. And she's just like, Spock, you just need to learn how to, learn when people need some space. And so I like that bit. I thought the acting there was quite well done for Ethan Peck. But yeah, truthfully, I don't have much for this episode. I thought it was a totally fine little piece of episodic television in the Strange New World pantheon so far. This is going to be, somewhere in the middle, maybe even the lower half, just because we've had so many strong episodes. This one's just a solid one. For my rating scale, I didn't even think about this beforehand. I don't know. Again, I don't know what unit measure they used, so that's I could be off from the rest of the group. My rating could be a little bit skewed again for Eric's his old gag. I think I'll rate this one out of boxes that hold memory boxes. So out of 5 memory boxes, I'll give this one, I'll give it a solid 3. In terms of the Strange New World catalog that we've gotten so far, this would probably be more like a 2.5, because it's just, down the middle, solid stuff. But even straight down the middle, solid stuff for Strange New Worlds, I think equals a 3. This is a totally fine episode. I would happily put this on again just to pass some time with some Star Trek. And sometimes that's all I need. I don't need bangers every time. Sometimes it's nice to just get a good piece of episodic Star Trek television. So thanks everyone for listening to this episode here. Hope you're enjoying our journey through Strange New World Season 2, and follow us on the next one. Thanks.